The rain was coming down in a relentless torrent as I parked my car in front of the Hardees, its neon sign flickering ominously in the storm. The clock on the dashboard read 11:30 p.m., and I was hungry enough to brave the weather for a late-night meal. The exterior of the fast food joint was eerie. The usual bustling atmosphere was replaced by an unsettling stillness. My footsteps echoed as I approached the entrance, feeling a pang of unease. Pushing the heavy door open, a rush of warm, greasy air greeted me. The familiar smell of fried food mixed with a strange mustiness that sent shivers down my spine. I glanced around, expecting to see the usual crew behind the counter, but the place was deserted. The only light came from the dim overhead fixtures, casting long shadows that danced on the faded, checkered floor. "Hello." No response. A wave of unease washed over me, but I chalked it up to the oddity of the situation. Maybe the staff was in the back, taking a break or doing inventory. I approached the counter, my footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. Behind the counter, the menu board displayed its offerings in faded letters. I scanned it, my stomach growling, but something caught my eye. Written in smeared ketchup on the glass sneeze guard was a message, LAAVENOW. My heart pounded as I looked around the deserted restaurant, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. Someone must be playing a prank, I thought, but the unease settled in the pit of my stomach like a lead weight. With a shaky hand, I wiped the message away, trying to dismiss the sense of foreboding. I decided to use the self-order kiosk. The screen flickered as I made my selections, the soft hum of the machine breaking the silence. But as I finalized my order, the machine suddenly glitched, displaying a different total and a series of random numbers and letters. I blinked, trying to make sense of it, when the screen went completely blank, plunging me into darkness. My heart raced as I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to navigate the pitch-black space. Panic welled up within me as I realized that the entrance door was locked from the inside. I called out again, louder this time, my voice wavering. "Is anyone here? This isn't funny." A distant sound made me freeze, a faint, muffled whisper that seemed to come from all directions. The hairs on my neck stood on end as the whispering grew louder, forming into disjointed phrases that I couldn't quite decipher. My heart raced as I spun around, trying to locate the source, but the voices seemed to be in my head, surrounding me in an unsettling cacophony. I stumbled back from the counter, my heart pounding, and that's when I noticed movement in the corner of my eye. A flicker of movement behind the grime-streaked window to the kitchen, as if someone had just darted out of sight. I turned toward it, my heart hammering in my chest. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response, but the faint sound of footsteps echoed from the kitchen. Swallowing hard, I took a cautious step forward, my flashlight illuminating the narrow passage leading to the kitchen's swinging doors. As I reached the doors, a cold draft washed over me, carrying with it the faint smell of decay. My stomach churned as I pushed the doors open slowly, revealing the dimly lit kitchen. The stainless steel counters were cluttered with half-prepared food, and the industrial-sized oven stood dark and silent. I hesitated, my heart racing, when a series of metallic clangs echoed from the back of the kitchen. It sounded like pots and pans being knocked over. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee from whatever was lurking back there, but curiosity and fear held me in place. Taking a deep breath, I moved forward, my footsteps hesitant and deliberate. The closer I got to the source of this noise, the stronger the musty smell became. It was almost suffocating. I rounded a corner and came face to face with a sight that made my blood run cold. On the floor, lying amidst a tangle of overturned pots, was a pile of rotting food. Maggots wriggled in the decomposing mess, and the stench was overpowering. I gagged, bile rising in my throat, and stumbled back in horror. The kitchen's ambience felt oppressive, as if it was closing in on me. As I retreated, it echoed from behind me, a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate through the walls. I spun around, my flashlight beam revealing nothing but empty space. My heart pounded, and I fought the urge to scream. I had to get out of there. I rushed back through the swinging doors, my footsteps echoing loudly in the deserted restaurant. The atmosphere was suffocating. I reached for the entrance door, desperately trying to open it, but it remained stubbornly locked. Panic clawed at my chest as I banged on the glass, screaming for help. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the restaurant into darkness once again. My heart raced as I turned, my flashlight flickering weakly. Shadows danced along the walls, and the whispering voices returned, louder and more frantic than before. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to block out the sound, but it was as if the voices were coming from within me. And then, in the midst of the chaos, a single, flickering light emerged from the kitchen. A feeble glow that seemed to pulse in time with my racing heart. I watched in terror as the light drew closer, revealing a figure stumbling into the dining area, a figure that looked like a disheveled and decayed version of a Hardees employee. My breath caught in my throat as the figure's dead eyes locked onto mine. Its lips twitched, forming into a grotesque semblance of a smile, and it let out a low, raspy chuckle. I backed away, my mind reeling in disbelief and horror. This couldn't be real. It was impossible. But as the figure advanced, its laughter growing louder, I knew I had no choice but to run. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I turned and bolted for the kitchen's swinging doors, my heart pounding in my ears. The figure's laughter echoed behind me, mixing with the incessant whispers that seemed to be tearing at the edges of my sanity. I burst through the doors and ran, fueled by pure fear, stumbling over discarded utensils and crates. The voices followed me, growing louder and more taunting. I reached the back exit, flung the door open, and burst out into the pouring rain, gasping for air. As I stood in the downpour, my heart still racing, I glanced back at the Hardees. Its neon sign flickered eerily against the stormy sky, and the building exuded an aura of malevolence that sent shivers down my spine. I knew I had narrowly escaped whatever horrors lurked within its walls. I stumbled to my car, soaking wet and shaken to my core. As I drove away from the deserted fast food joint, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed into a nightmarish dimension, a place where the boundaries between reality and terror had blurred. Even now, as I recount this story, the memory of that night weighs heavily on my mind. The thought that there are places hidden in the shadows, where the ordinary can transform into the grotesque and inexplicable, haunts my every step. And though I try to tell myself it was all just a trick of the mind, a product of fatigue and fear, a part of me will forever remain trapped in the desolation of that Hardees after dark.